Good morning. Happy Monday. Sorry I haven't done a video last week. Last week was very busy. I'm actually glad it's Monday because it was a very long week. So Monday is a new week, new start. Thanks for tuning into my video. So today's video is going to be about reading food labels because I think it's a basic skill. And I asked my kids, I was like, do they talk about that with you in school? And they were like, no. Granted, they're in middle school, but if you're having any sort of health or nutrition class, I feel like you need to understand the language and the information that they're trying to communicate to you on the food label. It's just like reading or writing. So anyway, I feel like that's like a you have to walk, you have to you have to crawl before you can walk kind of skill, not walk before you can crawl. So anyway, that's kind of the focus of today. So today's 2-word wellness in 2 words phrase is read labels. So first of all, I feel like ideally most of the food you eat when you're trying to make a dietary change is not going to require a label. Like an apple doesn't need a label, broccoli doesn't need a label. It's pretty evident what the food is and that there's not anything extra within that food. So first of all, if you're going to minimize your processed food intake, most of those foods aren't going to require a label. And you can look up some things, you could do the work of looking up what's the overall calorie count, how many fat grams, protein grams, that kind of thing in, whatever meat that you're eating. There are different apps that can do that. So I'm not a big calorie counter, but I am a food label reader. So most of us would argue that all calories are not created equal, correct? Like if somebody were to tell you, well, calories are kind of the same, you're like, no, I know they're not, because calories in an Oreo are different than the calories in an avocado. That's a basic tenet, right? So you cannot say that all calories are created equal. So understanding that, then when you look at a food label, you have to understand what they're trying to communicate to you. There's some basic requirements that the FDA has required that you do for food labeling, and that's important for allergies. That's important for a lot of different reasons. So let's just kind of look at a few and break it down. I went through my pantry. Some of these may not be the best choices. I haven't gone through the pantry lately, but anyway, so here we go. Number 1, we have some I'm not going to put the label on here, but all natural peanut butter, right? So this is something I bought, but we haven't opened yet. So when you look at the label, you'll notice on here, it has different things on there, right? So it's going to have serving size, total calories, all that kind of stuff. So I would recommend while you're watching this video, if you want to pause it, go get the label of something that you have in your pantry or your house, and we'll just kind of walk through what's on there, okay? This might be an easier box to go for right here. See this? Okay. So I know it's backwards, but it's okay. You'll see at the top, it says serving size, and it says servings per container. Then it's got total calories. Then it says the amount of calories from fat, which is a good thing. And then it goes in order of fat, and then it'll, I think, do sodium, and then cholesterol, then protein, and then carbohydrates, micronutrients, and goes down at the very, very bottom and does total ingredients, and then precautions or warnings. Okay, so number 1, because the thing that, let me just kind of back up. The thing that will derail you is that often foods that are billed as healthy, that have certain catchphrases like a protein thing or a power or whatever, often has hidden carbohydrates in it that will, number 1, kick you out of ketosis if you're trying to do a keto diet. And I'm a fan of keto/paleo blend. So there are things in there that will kick you out of ketosis that you might not realize unless you actually look at the calorie content, the breakdown. So number 1, look at the calories for the serving size. Is that serving size reasonable? Because first of all, it may have a very small serving size that in reality most people would power through 2 or 3 times that because Like, are you really going to eat just one cookie? Are you really just going to eat, like 5 chips? So look at the serving size and say, is it reasonable? And then you have to do the math, how many servings per container. So if you look at your container and you realize that it has, say, 6 servings in it, but it's this big, then you have to only eat 1/6 of what is in that container. Is that reasonable? Is that legit? So do that math on the front end, okay? Serving size, servings per container. What is a reasonable serving? Okay, then it'll say total calories in that serving. And what's great is it says calories from fat, because we've been brainwashed to think that fat is bad for us, when actually that calories per fat is super important, because I want that to be a higher number if it's a processed food. If indeed it's like an unsaturated fat or no trans fats, that kind of stuff. So look at total calories and calories per fat. The higher the number of calories per fat, it's actually better for you if you want to stay in ketosis and do a keto diet. That is, if you're eating something that's processed or in a box or has a label. Okay, so then you look at the total fat, okay? So on the total fat, hold on one second. There's a good choice. Look at this. Oh, here, this will be good. So, Marcona almonds. I love these things. They're the tastiest almonds ever. I could eat the entire jar. So anyway, when you look at on this one, it says here total fat. It breaks it down into saturated fat, trans fat, and then down further it does cholesterol. So this, for instance, has 170 calories from fat. And then it tells you total fat grams is 15 grams, only 1 gram of saturated fat, no trans fats. So it's all really good, healthy fats. That's important. So in a serving size, which this is really good actually. It says serving size is 1 ounce or 28 grams. We're not metric. About 26 pieces. So if I had 26 almonds, which is a pretty generous little chunk, there's 170 calories in it, and it's going to be 15 grams of fat. Now, it breaks it down further. There's no cholesterol, which cholesterol is not evil, by the way. And then there's sodium, which is 220 milligrams, and then total carbs is 5 grams with 3 grams of fiber. Okay, so we'll get into that in just a minute. That's important because that tells me that I have a low net carb type food. And then this also has protein in it, so it's good. So again, look at your fat, look at the calories from fat, look at the total grams of fat, and make sure that it's low in trans fat. Don't worry as much about saturated fat. So anyway, that's that. Okay. So then cholesterol, again, I'm not a big believer that dietary cholesterol, and there's actually been some research to support this, and I'll try to link that on a website, but dietary cholesterol is actually evil. It's really not. And actually saturated fats aren't as bad for you as people seem to think. What's bad is underlying inflammation, and the inflammation comes from eating unnatural foods and having an impaired gut microbiome. So those are for later. Okay, so total carbs. Then you want to look at your carbohydrate amount. So let's go back to this label and we'll look at it and say, okay, so it says on here, total carbs is 5, dietary fiber is 3, and then sugars is 1 grams. So, because these aren't processed and added, coated or roasted or honey roasted or any of that stuff. It's just straight up salted Marcona almonds. So, in order to figure out your net carbs, which is your important number, because dietary fiber doesn't count, you take 5, which is the total carbs, minus the fiber grams, which is 3. So 5 minus 3 equals 2 grams of net carbs. That's really good because a lot of things you'll notice will be high in carbohydrates but very low in fiber, which means you're just getting all simple carbs and not complex carbs. So hold on. An example of that would be the rice that my husband bought the other day. And when you look at this one, and I know it's backwards, sorry, you can sit here and say, all right, here, well, let's just, anyway, 38 grams of carbs, only 1 gram of fiber, no extra sugars. So it's basically 37 grams of simple carbohydrates in this white rice. because it's white rice and not brown rice. It doesn't have, it's been refined. It doesn't have all the fiber on it. So that's one way to look at food labels, is to say fat, carbs, net carbs, which is total minus fiber. And then next thing is going to be protein. And protein is important when you're doing a keto diet, especially because you want to make sure that you don't lose muscle. Muscle helps you burn fat at rest. So you want to preserve your muscle when you're changing your eating habits. But you also don't want to eat so much protein that you kick yourself out of ketosis and your body is just using protein for fuel. You want your body to use fat for fuel, because fat is good, because you want to break down the fat that's on you if you're trying to induce weight loss. So protein, calories from protein is important. You want to kind of stay in that sweet spot. So predominantly fat diet, proteins next, then carbs. So when you look at your proteins, you like to say, okay, on this one, 6 grams of protein. So I'm going to have like a target maybe of how many grams of protein I want to kind of stay within a day's time. So that's important. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to actually you can kind of look at micronutrients if you want to, but if you're taking supplements like me, I love the supplements I take. I will never not take them. And I know that they are potent. So I'm not going to worry so much about micronutrients because I'm getting them from other sources. So for me, that's not as much of an issue. All right. So then you go down to the bottom and you're going to see any potential warnings, like, may be processed in a facility that does whatever, or it may have nuts, soy, milk, wheat, any of those things that are potential allergens. So that's important information. But then you look at the whole ingredients part, and that's where things can also get very interesting. Like on this one, it says here, ingredients, right? Just right in this little box here. Ingredients. Long grain rice. It's parboiled, which is how they get a lot of the fiber and stuff off of it. Long grain rice, it has iron ferric orthophosphate. I'm not sure what that is. Orthophosphate, I'm kind of like, what? Anyway. Niacin, thiamine, so it is enriched. It's got some vitamins in there, B vitamins and such. And then folate, which is also a B vitamin. So it's enriched with B vitamins. It does have some iron ferric orthophosphate. I'm not sure what organic compound that would be. I'd have to do some research. But so they're trying to enrich it for you so you can get some of those. Oh my goodness, wow, the sun's out today. Get some of those micronutrients as well. Now, one thing when it comes to food labels, the longer the ingredient list and the more of them that you cannot pronounce, the worse it is for you typically, because that means it's got a lot of additives, it's got a lot of other things, preservative, things that you really shouldn't be doing. So again, food in a box, always suspect, right? If it is food in a box or food in a package, read the label, look at your total serving size. Is it a reasonable serving size? Look at calories from fat. The higher that number is, the better if you're wanting to do keto. Total fat, make sure it's low in trans fats. Then look at total carbs, calculate your net carbs, take your total carbs minus the fiber that's in it, and then look at your total protein, and then look at your ingredient list to make sure that it's just not a bunch of bizarre food from wherever, like not natural. Okay, so hopefully that helps. It's because counting calories is a lot of work. Counting macros is a little bit easier. I'm going to do another video on that tomorrow about how you count macros if you're doing like a keto calculation, kind of run a little like quick time video for that. That's a little easier to say, okay, how much do I weigh? What's my percentage of body fat? What is my goal? Do I want to induce weight loss? That kind of stuff. There's actually a really good keto calculator on here that might seem intimidating, but when you kind of know what your goal is, it kind of is a whole lot easier with the questions it asked. I was pretty impressed with it. So, read labels. Most of your food should not have a label. Like butter has a label, but we know it's butter. We know how many calories, it's pure fat. We know how many calories are going to be for butter. You don't have to count that. You just can look at it and go, oh, it has this many grams of fat, and move on. But hopefully that helps for today. So I know it's kind of a short video but it's a basic skill. All right, so we'll talk more about the next thing is going to be keto calculations, and then next is going to be sugar and talking about sugar substitutes, because one of them that I really love, and I'll show you this already to preview, is Swerve. So Swerve and Stevia both are staples in my armamentarium, so then I'm not doing artificial sweeteners and I can minimize my actual sugar intake because they're inert sugars, which means they don't have any physiologic activity and they don't increase your insulin. But there's more on that later. Have a great day, and thanks for listening in.